Hello, I'm Shanique Street, the Director of Corporate Relations and Strategic Partnerships at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. I would like to introduce Maury Wolf, Assistant Vice President for Corporate Responsibility and Public Affairs at Cox Enterprises, and Steve Scabello, President of NFL Players, Inc. Thank you so much for joining us for today's panel. Entrepreneurship is a key component of thriving communities and societies. Additionally, business ownership plays a large role in wealth building and closing the wealth gap that exists in the United States. It is important for us to learn more about the work of companies to address the exclusion of various groups from the larger business community and the way forward. So today, we want to spend some time learning from companies working with entrepreneurs to grow and scale their business. This year, we've seen an increased sense of urgency to address issues of racial equity in 2020, and particularly in recent months. I would like to direct my first question to the two of you, Maury and Steve. But Steve, let's start with you. While there have been major increases in the number of businesses owned by women and racial minorities, there's still much to be done. What is your organization doing to expand the growth and outcomes of companies that are owned by women and minorities? Steve?
Thanks, Shanique. And thank you for having us here. Just quick overview. NFL Players, Inc. is the licensing and marketing arm of the NFL Players Association. So we work with all 2,000 plus current players in the NFL. And the video that you showed up front is from an event that we've run for the past 4 years during Super Bowl week called Pitch Day. Pitch Day is a good example of an event that we've incorporated into our business in an effort to allow entrepreneurs and startup businesses to have an opportunity to work with us. Traditionally or historically, it was large companies that would be our business partners. But by launching Pitch Day, we embraced the opportunity to work with startups. And last year, we really made it a focus where we said every company that we were going to select to be part of Pitch Day needed to be either woman-owned or minority-owned. And we just thought it was important that was an objective that we recognized that we were falling short of, that we wanted to make sure that by working with startups, we were opening the opportunity to work with more companies that were women or minority-led, and we were falling short. So we changed it. We just said those will be the only companies that we allowed to participate in this Pitch Day, and it really opened up the breadth and scope of companies that we're able to work with. And that's an effort that we are continuing as we plan our Pitch Day for next year as well.
Thank you, Steve. That sounds amazing, and that you and your team have been doing the work on these issues. Maury, I turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you. And I echo Steve. Thanks for having us today. Really appreciate it. Some background for us is probably helpful also. So Cox Enterprises is a conglomerate. We are a family-run company, a private business, and we have two major divisions, one of which is Cox Automotive, so things like Kelley Blue Book and Auto Trader, and the other is Cox Communication, which is internet and broadband. And in this role as a conglomerate, we are always looking for the future. And one of the great things about a private company is you really think generationally, you really think long-term about what we need the market to do, what we want our hometown of Atlanta to be like in order to meet our growth projections. And one of the things that we noticed a few years ago is that we really felt like there was a strong interest and appetite and need to bring innovation and the startup community to Atlanta. Not with the particular mindset that we would acquire the businesses, but that with the idea that by bringing that kind of innovation, that spark, the excitement that comes with it, the brains and diversity and energy, that would really, by default, help us grow our business and bring the right talent to our hometown. So we've been investing in the startup ecosystem in Atlanta in a number of ways, whether it's through pitch competitions or startup incubators. And the one that's sort of our mega investment is our partnership with Techstars, where we bring 10 companies in through a 3-month incubator, and they're set to grow about 2 years within that 3-month period. What we are launching is a shift this year with one of our TechStars classes that we call TechStars for Impact, to really focus that class on companies that are solving racial justice and social inequity challenges. So the idea of investing in the startup system has been there for a long time, but we really felt like the timing was right to find 10 for-profit companies that were innovating solutions in a way that maybe the rest of us have missed. We've known the problems, but it's time to sort of shake up what we're thinking about in terms of solves.
Great. Both of those programs sound amazing, the work that you're doing with TechStars, and Steve, the work that you and your team have been doing with Pitch Day. How would you say, as I mentioned, 2020 is the year where there seems to be an urgency in terms of addressing these issues. What were the conversations like for you and your team in terms of working to address these issues? I'll start with you, Steve.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Shanique. Our team's goal was really to just make sure that above and beyond doing the special events like a pitch day and ensuring that we're focused on minority and women-owned businesses being endemic part of that. It's looking at our core business and how do we make sure that when we're looking at companies who are applying to become our partners, and that's either a licensed good or service that they want to work with a group of NFL players, how do we just make sure that diversity and inclusion is a core component of the criteria that we're looking at, and we're making this a primary thought, right? This is something that is just critical to us, critical to the player membership that we represent, and it goes beyond some of the things that we typically look for in our partners, right? What's the fit with our business? What's the fit for sports? And how do we set a platform so that those companies have a chance to work with us, work with our players? A lot of NFL players, a lot of athletes have an entrepreneurial focus and are themselves going to be future small business owners. So how do we make sure that we're introducing those players who have that type of mindset to some of these small businesses, offering that as a handout? It's kind of a win-win, right? So that those players who are interested in becoming entrepreneurs have a chance to help small businesses get up off the ground. And likewise, if companies see a fit for having a player involved in their business to help them launch or break through and get to that next level, that we become the platform to connect those businesses and those players.
Okay. And Steve, I would say, I think I've seen a number of commercials where some of the players have, supported small businesses. I believe it was about cupcakes, and I questioned whether or not those players ate those cupcakes.
Sure. On the probably on the cheat days, but you have to sample the product to make sure that it's good.
Certainly. And Maury, tell me more about what the conversations were like on your team.
Yeah, I'm distracted by the thought of those NFL players eating the cupcakes too. But the conversations, I'm sure they took a bit of a similar tone to what Steve described. You look at your company and you realize how much work you have to do yourselves and wanting to get your own house in order. And Cox has played in the community and the equity space for a really long time and has made great progress. We've always had programs to both train and help small businesses get certified so that they can not only benefit as a part of our supply chain, but others. There's a number of things we had done, but years like 2020 really challenge you to make sure you're looking in the mirror and being really honest about what opportunities you still have. When we looked at TechStars, this was a real opportunity where our managing director of that program really came to us and sat down and highlighted, there's a way to look at this differently. All the corporations are doing the work that they really need to be doing and is probably long overdue around looking at their own diversity statistics and equity and do your people really feel included. And that's important work. There's also an opportunity to look at things differently, and that's what we got really excited about with TechStars. Thinking about Atlanta as the home of the civil rights movement, thinking about the diversity of businesses and the diversity of our people in Atlanta, bringing the companies that we know will be shoulder to shoulder with us, the other corporations that would be willing to help step in. And we really thought there might be a new way to look at solutions. And so the pivot to make this entire class of Techstars companies focused on this one challenge was a bit of a gamble. We weren't sure how many applicants we would get, but we've been overwhelmed with the response. We're finalizing the pool now. And I think the conversations were really about that feeling of inspiration that we could find solutions and change in this next generation of entrepreneurs. I mean, as Steve said, there's whether it's the players or whether we're getting them from tech companies, I mean, there's this whole generation of better and new ideas that we can foster to figure out how to solve some of these really big problems that we have not overcome yet.
Thank you. As you spoke about, addressing some of the problems that exist in our society, one thing that we have noticed is that crisis oftentimes breeds innovation. So, as you mentioned, that what kind of shift have you seen in the types of startups and types of businesses that have applied for the Pitch Day program, Steve, or for the Techstars for Impact program? Have you seen such a change in this recent cycle? And what does that look like?
Sure. I'll answer just in terms of Pitch Day. We've seen across the spectrum companies that we're going to welcome to pitch and hopefully have an opportunity to work with us. Consumer packaged goods, experiential, entertainment, gaming, and tech. Some of the areas that I think are really in need of now kind of a refresher to see what will look like in a post-pandemic world are youth sports. So we're talking to some companies in youth sports, and then health, safety, and performance. Fitness trackers, personal trackers. How are we tracking our data? These trackers can actually help some of them be aware of changes that might indicate if you've contracted COVID. So these are things that I think we're just paying more attention to, even direct to consumer. Right, and the ability for companies to bring their goods directly to the audience that they're trying to reach. So while we're always open to working with a broad spectrum of companies, I think some of those, like the youth sports, health and safety, and then direct to consumer, we've seen a little bit more of that in recent months.
Thank you. That makes sense that it would be such an important issue at this time with so many people at home and wanting to figure out ways to still remain engaged in physical activity, but also mindful of the global pandemic and the health issues that also arise. So thank you for sharing that. Maury, what about you? What have you seen in terms of the changes?
Yeah, Shanique, I feel like your mantra around innovation from disaster has been ours as well. And Steve, I'm really excited about the things that you mentioned. Some of the other stuff that we also saw was from our previous class, which actually we had a Techstars class in session when the pandemic hit. So we had all these entrepreneurs who had moved to Atlanta and uprooted everything, and then we had to go completely virtual. And that's, when you only 12 weeks, losing time to do that is pretty drastic. What we were really interested in was how many of them that were really in the education technology space really flourished and continue to be seeing really accelerated growth. I think similar to what Steve was talking about and like the health and wellness and side of it, we all know how, you can see from my background, how challenging it is when you are now homeschooling and working at the same time. So the applications and tools that had been a part of our class sort of as a happy accident around education and at home learning or how to get kids active for brain breaks in the middle of the day have really taken off. They were selling to schools and now they're selling to parents, but they're able to really pivot, the entrepreneurs are able to pivot. We, as I said, haven't finalized our class for the next round of Techstars, but for a flavor of what we're seeing, and I think is really representative of the market, we've seen a lot on equalizing healthcare access, since we know minority populations are not equally served in this space. And so what tools and apps and matching resources are out there. We saw a number of tools around how to connect and have your voice heard with government officials. So how can you direct connect and understand who's making choices on your behalf, and how might we incentivize that? We saw some things around criminal justice reform. So a lot of interesting applications that may have been thought of as the nonprofit space before, that now innovators are thinking of turning into a business. And so it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds.
Definitely. You've mentioned quite a few interesting topics that you've seen highlighted in the application process: the criminal justice issues, health and wellness, and also just innovative approaches to healthcare. So I can only imagine what kind of applicants you'll receive moving forward. Another question for you: both of you have spoken about, your work with Pitch Day and your work with Techstars, and it sounds like there's such an interesting alumni network that you must have. How has the role of the alumni evolved for the Pitch Day and Techstar alumni community? Start.
What's great for us is the ability to welcome some of the winning companies back, right? So some of the companies that were just getting started and pitching their ability to work with us, we bring back in future years to serve as panelists and judges and mentors, right? And to be able to give real world examples to the companies who are now pitching about, here's how you can work with NFL players to help get your business off the ground. One of the companies that was a winner in an early year, we provide marketing support and we'll pay for a player to serve as an endorser. And one of the companies that won was able to bring an NFL player into a sales meeting that she had with a grocery store. It was for baby food, a healthy brand of baby food. And the player had just welcomed a new child into his home. So he was able to talk about why this healthy food was important to him, and was really able to help that small business owner make her case to a major retail chain, and she was able to successfully sell her product in. So now in a future year, we invited her back so that she could be a panelist, she could be a judge, and then she could help mentor those future winners and how to go about deploying the prizes that we're able to offer.
Okay. Baby food, that's a new one that I didn't expect to hear mentioned.
Right. But it was a great company. It was a great pitch, and she earned the victory. Wonderful.
Maury, what about you? What have you seen in terms of the evolution of the alumni network that you work with?
Well, I'm really jealous of Steve's endorsement opportunities. We don't quite have those in our alumni network. We may have to join forces. We see very similar things. I mean, this is a very giving community, and I think there's a lot of, pay it forward and lift up those behind you. So our alumni network does very similar things. They come back to mentor. They come back to, sometimes we see them eventually sitting on the boards of some of the companies that are coming behind them. We actually have family dinner night once a week during session, where we have a previous alumni come back and tell their story off the record, the successes, the failures, the ups and downs of startups. I think we all tend to latch on to the glossy stories at the end, the real success factors. And startups are really, it's a tough business. There's a very emotional cycle around how these entrepreneurs are doing, and many of them have put it all on the line for a big bet. So I think that's another component where we bring our alumni back to really be that shoulder of support and to help mentor on the business side, but also through that emotional journey that a lot of the founders are understandably going through. But I think you'd hear the same things from me and Steve, because it tends to be such a giving community. It's not a hard sell to bring them back.
Thank you. I know that, these are some topics that are oftentimes mentioned about entrepreneurship and just the difficulty of it, but also the importance of having a community of fellow entrepreneurs that they can lean on, as well as mentors in the space and sponsors in the space. So thank you so much for all the great work that you and your teams are doing at Cox Enterprises and the NFLPA. I know we're running short on time, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time today to share about the great work that you and your teams are doing. And, we look forward to working with you in the future and hearing about all the great things that you will continue to do. I have no doubt.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Shanique.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You too.